You are listening to GeekFest Rants on the IC Robots Radio Network.
You have located GeekFest Rants, the entertainment podcast for genre geeks like you.
Shall we play a game?
Covering the world of vintage and current film and television since 2010.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Featuring in-depth conversations on sci-fi, horror, fantasy, comics, toys, and conventions.
So say we all. So say we all.
And now sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show.
I've been running scams on the street since I was 10. I was kicked out of the flight academy for having a mind of my own. I'm gonna be a pilot. Best in the galaxy.
Hey, kid. I'm putting together a crew. You in?
That's yes.
I might be the only person. Who knows what you really are?
What's that?
Get ready.
Thought we were in trouble there for a second, but it's fine. We're fine.
So you want to make a difference?
Yeah.
Trust me, you're gonna love it. And which branch are you interested in joining?
I'm gonna be a pilot. Best in the galaxy.
Your name?
Hi everybody and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perone and today we are starting off with Solo, the eagerly awaited, soon to be here, next Star Wars film, the second standalone film, Solo, finally gave us a teaser and a trailer over the last couple of days, and we're going to go shot by shot, trying to see how much we can extract from these teasers and trailers. Finally, we have something to look at. You know, we were starting to get very worried that the time was drawing closer and closer and still nothing to look at, but we finally have something, so we're going to take a look at that first and foremost. Then we're going to jump over to what I could probably call weird television, and that is, you know, to fill that Stranger Things void that we're all suffering from, we explore some other shows that could have been inspired or somewhat also could be suggested as alternative watches to Stranger Things. More serious shows, for example, Twin Peaks. We're going to look at the third season, The Return, on Showtime. We're going to look at a German show called Dark. We're going to also look at a pretty established, very good anthology show called Black Mirror. Then Electric Dreams, its younger brother, if you will. Another brand new show, Altered Carbon, from Netflix. And finally, Counterpart from Starz. So there's a lot of options out there in terms of being able to try to go in that direction of the either anthology or just regular type of show, but the very unusual, very sci-fi, supernaturally kind of themes. There's a lot of stuff out there still, that you can pick at. But, we've been waiting for this one for a while now, so let's start off with Solo.
What did I teach you?
You are the Duke of New York. You're a number one.
You will not laugh. You will not cry. You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
Can you dig it?
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
That spawn of Satan.
Oh, really?
The Force will be with you, always.
All right, so let's go through the trailer shot by shot. Now, this is going to be the extended trailer, not the one that they aired during the Super Bowl, but it does incorporate a few of the same shots from the previous one. The trailer starts off, again, with this kind of a countdown-y type of clicking sounds of the Falcon being engaged, kind of turning it on, engaging all these buttons. And it's a narrative by Solo talking about his younger life. And off the bat, one of the things you do notice a little at first, and you notice it way more later, is how clean the Falcon looks, how newish it kind of looks. So the narrative talks about how he's been running these scams since he was a little kid, out in the streets. And you see shots of some kind of a speeder speeding through town, and you get a head-on shot of Solo and Kira, and how he is kind of weaving through traffic and evading whoever seems to be kind of chasing him on these motorcycle-y looking things. And he mentions that he was kicked out of the flight academy for having a mind of his own. That kind of starts to take you in the track of I guess it's the post-clone era where these clones didn't have much of a mind of their own. And even to this point, I guess, in the story, they are kind of acknowledging, I guess, that even though we're not dealing with clones anymore, most likely, the troops that are being taught, they are still very uniformly thinking kind of recruits, if you will. And then you see, one of these motorcycle speeder kind of guys that flips over. He looks a little bit like could be kind of a variation on a stormtrooper. And he's still being chased by other vehicles. Then we kind of do a quick dissolve into some mountain range, kind of snowy looking area. And the narrator continues with him talking about how he is going to, I guess, one day be a pilot, the best in the galaxy and that sort of thing. And you do get a montage of shots of the inside of the Falcon now, the whole way. And again, it looks pristine. It looks super clean, super new. And an outside shot of him wearing very furry looking coat, because I guess he's in a cold environment, walking around the perimeter of what is the Falcon. But you can't see it too well because it's very dusty outside and foggy, kind of low visibility type of an environment. And then you get a shot of him in a cliff, seaside type of area talking to somebody, and you get a different voiceover now, a guy who is Woody Harrelson talking to him saying, "Hey kid, I'm putting together a different kind of crew." So you can kind of tell this guy is going to hire him to perform some kind of a mission. And we do know, from what we've learned so far about the movie, that Woody Harrelson's character is kind of like a mentor, if you will, to Solo. So now you're getting that connection here. Then you get a couple of quick shots of other characters whom probably, I imagine, are part of this crew that he's referring to. The first one is this woman who, not entirely sure who she is. It might be the same woman from the beginning, but she's wearing like a red robe and a black and white outfit, and she has a robot kind of walking beside her. And the type of robot that it is, it's not exactly, but it is a little bit kind of like the tactical droid from Clone Wars. If you remember that design of robot, that kind of walking robot. Then you get a shot of Lando. And he is wearing, apparently, from what I see here, the traditional Lando outfit for this particular film, which is a black and yellow shirt. He looks good. He looks like he's really enjoying himself as far as portraying that role. Then you get another character. She's kind of like adjusting her gun, wearing possibly some kind of spacesuit. Again, more of the crew, I guess. And then you have an alien kind of creature who looks like he's manning a gun. It might be the Falcon's top or bottom gun. I'm not sure. It could be a completely different ship. Very possible. Looks a little different. But he's kind of, I don't want to say Mas Katana looking, but he is kind of like slightly reptilian, Not the huge giant mass katana eyes, but a little different, wearing goggles and, again, another space flight suit. And he is asked by Woody Harrelson, are you in? And you get a shot of Chewie saying, growling, and his response is, that's a yes. So again, the trailer has a certain beat, a certain, I don't want to call it music video type of thing, but it is set to a very modern-y kind of music. And the clicks are going along with the sound of the soundtrack, the clicks of the instruments being turned on and that sort of thing. It did remind me a little bit of Baby Driver, the tricks that they used for that soundtrack, of the movements and the clicking sounds and all that stuff. It has a little bit of that. I wonder if they kind of used it as inspiration. Then you get a title card that says this summer, because again, this is only happening in a few months, and a couple of panoramic kind of shots of different settings, different environments. Appears to be some kind of a nightclub with all these exotic creatures dancing. And once again, you get Kira wearing a different kind of outfit, and her talking to Solo, saying that she's probably the only person who really knows who he really is. And you do get these montage kind of shots, like I said, of him standing at a beach, and it's like a gunfight. You could see his gun holster. He's unstrapping the safety latch on the gun, and in the far foreground, you could see a whole bunch of possibly bad guys ready to duel with him. Very, very Western-y looking. One of those might be a Kessel Guard, I think. I could be wrong, because I did see pictures of the action figures, of a few of the action figures that are coming out. And, he's wearing this metallic mask and kind of very exotic clothing. A couple of fight shots. The robot pops up again. Another flight shot of some kind of a transport vehicle. Very square, rectangular looking. It's funny, I was looking on Facebook earlier today, and one person speculated that it is based on the Bespin mini rig from Kenner, which would not surprise me one bit. I would have to take a closer look to figure out if it's not. But it's that kind of a design. It's like a very, very boxy, rectangular with fins in the front type of design. And then you get his response to what you really are, and he's just like smiling and saying, "What's that?" Meaning, what answer does he have? And then you have the movie slate card, which says Solo, a Star Wars story, and you hear the music of a little bit of the music of Star Wars in the background, the da 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 da, that kind of thing in the background. And then you get one of the coolest shots of the trailer, and that is the Falcon flying, in the front of the camera, which appears to be being chased by a Star Destroyer and TIE fighters, but they're coming out of what appears to be kind of like a cloud formation, a circular cloud formation, almost like a tornado, if you will, but flying through the actual tunnel. So it's like a cloud tunnel. And as the clouds start to dissipate a little bit, you get a better, clear image of the Star Destroyer that's right behind it. Could this be the Kessel Run? It's possible. Plus, one of the lead TIE fighters that is shooting at the Falcon is one that we haven't seen before. It is similar to a typical TIE fighter, but it looks a little bit like a TIE bomber. Not as wide, not with a completely second compartment that is pretty much the same as the regular compartment, but it does seem to have a secondary section to it. So we'll see what that's about. Oh, and a great shot then of Solo saying, "Get ready," and he does this maneuver with the ship where he flips the ship and he actually slaps and destroys a TIE fighter that's getting too close to him just by the motion of the Falcon rotating and slapping it down. And then he turns around and is telling everybody, you guys thought we were in trouble there for a second, but everything's okay. The typical Solo cockiness that you hear. And then he turns around and everybody screams because there's something else in front of them. And it appears to be some kind of a creature that is so large that you can't really get a picture of the entire creature. But you see these giant tentacles kind of flinging around and the Falcon trying to dodge, these gigantic tentacle looking things. And the tentacles, instead of tentacles like with big suckers on them, like a octopus, it looks like it's almost like it has teeth instead of suckers. And that's the end of the trailer. Now, for the Super Bowl, what they gave us was some of those shots, which is a much smaller one, but it is centered in a different manner. It is constructed in a different manner. You still have that countdown-y type of click, 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 flicking switches, but the whole teaser is kind of wrapped around Solo talking to an Imperial officer in what could be considered some kind of a recruiting environment, a recruiting station, let's say, and they're sitting down. There's a lot of people around them, but they're in this little cubicle kind of area in the middle, and he's asking him, what kind of, what branch are you interested in? He's saying, he wants to be a pilot. He wants to be the best pilot in the galaxy. And as this conversation takes place, you do get, again, a montage, kind of a click, click, click presentation of different shots. You get the Star Destroyer shot that we were talking about a few seconds ago, but it's from a different angle. It's coming straight at you, like the clouds are opening and it's peeking through. You get the deployment of the TIE fighters from the bottom of that Star Destroyer. You get more action shots of the chase, the speeder chase that we talked about in the beginning of the other trailer also. Just different angles, different reaction shots, robots all of a sudden noticing that there's something going on, that kind of stuff. You get, once again, the interior shots of the Falcon, the nice clean-looking Falcon, of him walking around it in that dusty environment. The slate telling you that, this summer. Shot of Kira, shot of the robot that's possibly her robot, I'm not entirely sure. You get a shot also of what appears to be a almost like a monorail-y type of train system that kind of seems to curve and kind of rotate on its own track. You get Woody Harrelson's character. A couple more shots of that bar or that lounge. Then you get a shot of what appears to be some kind of a gunfight on top of that train. So it's, again, we're going for the Western motif here, I think. I think that's how they're approaching this story. They're kind of turning it into a Western. Then you get a cool shot again of Lando. He's wearing this kind of like a fur warm coat and just kind of looking straight, over the camera. Then you get a rear shot of the Falcon, which is the first time we see it on this smaller trailer. And then you get a shot of Solo kind of looking down, and I don't know if it's a mugshot or if it's just a dark, purposely looking shot of a voiceover saying, "And your name?" And he's kind of looking down and then starts to look up towards whoever's talking to him, and that's the end of the trailer there, followed by the Solo slate card. And the little extra shot at the end after the slate card is a rear shot of him and Chewbacca growling and put his hand over Solo's shoulder, which is a nice little touch at the end. Slightly different, a couple of different things you could see on that one. Between the two of them, that's a lot of information they gave us, obviously. But I am able to, like I said, extrapolate something out of this. The feel of what they're going for, I think. I'm not going to lie, this is an exciting trailer. When you put them both together, or either one at a time, there is a good amount of information here. Now, how many trailers look bad? Not too many. I was really excited about The Last Jedi, and you guys know by now how I feel about that movie. This is an opportunity to probably course correct, even though I'm sure most of the course correction that was needed is way behind them by the time that they realized that something probably didn't go exactly as planned with Last Jedi. The movie only came out 2 months ago. I'm sure this was pretty much locked in already in terms of the editing. I'm sure they're in special effects and music right now because it is so late in the game. I'll say it again. I said it before. When you are going to break the rules and create something new, it's better to do it on these type of films, on an offshoot film. You can get away with that. It is not so directly tied into something else that a course correction would be so jaunting to the audience. We don't get too much of Han Solo talking, just a little bit. It is the first trailer after all. We had a teaser and a trailer. Basically, that's what we have. Most likely we'll get one more trailer, 2 maybe, I don't know. I think we're so close now that maybe we might just get one more. I like the visuals. What I'm hoping for is that this is kind of like Rogue One in terms of, yes, Rogue One had some baggage, not as gigantic as this movie. This movie had the directors being fired, new director brought in at the last minute, reshot a lot of stuff. Hopefully it won't feel very choppy. Hopefully we'll get that Rogue One magic that we got with Rogue One. But for this being the first taste of the movie, I'm interested. I'm eager, And even if we didn't get this particular trailer, I was going to go, there's no way in heck I'm not going to go see this movie. The trailer, they did a good job. I want to see more. Next is going to be the fan reaction. Let's see how the fans react to, once we get this film.
Television is not the truth. Television is an amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business.
Today we're going to talk about a couple of television shows that are really strange that I just either finished watching or in the process of watching. Part of it has to do with the fact that we, not so long ago, finished watching the second season of Stranger Things, and, we are looking for a new fix for a very strange kind of television show. And one way to go in that direction was to take a look at Twin Peaks, the third season, if you will, the Showtime version, the revival of Twin Peaks. Now, I was never a gigantic Twin Peaks fan. I'm pretty sure I watched the first season and possibly the second season. I was pretty confused by it, and I don't even know if I initially bothered watching the film that they made, Fire Walk With Me. By the time I saw it, I'm pretty sure I was even more confused than I was before. Because with Twin Peaks, obviously with David Lynch, you're in another planet sometimes. So I gave this one a try. This was put on Showtime, and it was a full run of episodes that they did. A somewhat longer than expected amount of episodes. You normally figure that for a cable series, especially nowadays, they go for the 10 or 12 episode route, but this one was about 18 episodes. So this was a pretty big order. And I imagine it's got to do with Lynch. I mean, he wants to tell his story and it takes a certain amount of time. Now, the best way to describe this series, there is no best way to describe this series. It is just plain weird. You do have a murder mystery, if you will, happening, but at the same time, you have this metaphysical, otherworldly, supernatural things that are also happening at the same time. Most of the series deals with the fact that you have two Kyle MacLachlan characters. You have Agent Cooper and then like the evil Agent Cooper that kind of ended, the original initial run. Now, there is no way I can give you a synopsis of what is happening because I still don't understand what's happening. Like I said before, there's two things happening and I can barely keep up with just the normal earthly things that are happening. But the problem is that they get combined with this other weird, bizarre stuff that you're just amazed at what is going on in front of you. Now, I mentioned this once before when we were talking about, I think we were talking about Star Trek The Motion Picture. There are certain directors that break the rules, and they are allowed to break the rules, and it mostly works for them to break those rules. And by that, I'm talking about long, lingering shots, overextended long periods of silence, where the camera is just focused on somebody, and nothing is happening. Most times, that could be considered to be a mistake, bad editing, or bad something. But somebody like Kubrick, which obviously we don't have anymore, but you could see it in his films, and somebody like Lynch, you can get away with that because they paint, especially with Lynch, he paints such an unusual setting for his stories that it almost kind of makes sense when you see these really unusual transitions or shots taking place, very staticky, very quiet sometimes. The breakdown of the story, it's really, again, it's very hard to tell. And you really don't wrap up all your threads here. This season basically ends with a cliffhanger kind of thing where, again, this is going to be spoilers up the wazoo here because and believe me, it doesn't make any sense to you. It will not make any sense. You will not be able to understand what's going on. But it seems as if there is a time travel element at the end of the season that people have shifted into a different time period where certain things have not happened or are about to happen. Certain events were changed but not changed. Most of the series deals with Kyle MacLachlan the Agent Cooper side of Kyle MacLachlan, which is really not even him, but him kind of trapped in the body of someone else, but we see him as Agent Cooper, and he is more or less catatonic for 3/4 of the series, but he is so hilarious in his somewhat catatonic state that he's in, where he is trying to adjust to this life that he's living and trying to kind of come back to his FBI roots and trying to find his way out and not saying much, but being so unbelievably funny and effective by it. And the other one is the evil Cooper, which is this, I don't know what the hell it is, some kind of a demon, otherworldly creature, multi-dimensional. I have no clue. Still no clue what's going on. They throw so many characters and they do so many weird things. And there was one whole episode that was done in black and white that I think took place in this other dimension that I cannot for the life of me understand what happened. And the funny thing is that if you go on YouTube and you start searching for Twin Peaks Explained or Twin Peaks The Return Explained, which is the return, I think, is the tagline for this particular season. People theorize on it left and right, and I can't even follow their theories. It is such a complicated, convoluted, weird show, and it's just, it is the definition of weird. So, like I started off the segment today, this all came about because of Stranger Things. I wanted to kind of go in the Stranger Things direction, in the sci-fi monster reality crime solving, that kind of combination. And granted, Stranger Things is not, top of the line, smart and serious. Stranger Things is for kids, I think, slightly adults. It kind of pulls at your heartstrings with the nostalgic 80s, so they're riding a fine line with that show. Twin Peaks is completely adult, and even an adult will not understand what's going on. So with that said, I was completely entertained. So I cannot tell you why the show is so good, but it is good, but you will not understand what's going on. So Twin Peaks is kind of like the granddaddy, at least for me, of the bizarre show that I cannot explain, that all other shows kind of fall under, that try to go in that direction. Now, I might have gone online at some point, or I might have seen, as soon as Stranger Things had finished its run, which, as you guys know, they post all the episodes in one shot, and then you just binge watch them at some point. And around that time, they would then, if you go to Facebook, for example, and some of the groups that I follow, or the different sites that I follow, they would post articles like what to watch next after Stranger Things, or other shows that are available that are kind of like Stranger Things, So one of the shows that was suggested in one of these posts was something called Dark, and it was also on Netflix. Okay, Dark is a German sci-fi thriller mystery series. It reminded me a lot of Lost. That's one of the things they compared it to in a way. It's only 10 episodes long, so it's more of a typical run as far as I'm concerned, more of what I'm used to now with these streaming services and even cable shows. It's German, so I don't know how you guys like to watch foreign stuff, but to me, I like to watch it in the original language with the English subtitles underneath. I'd rather not watch stuff dubbed because to me it just looks bad and it sounds bad. And sometimes the translations feel awkward. I'd rather hear something in a different language and at least the actor is projecting these emotions in the proper language and then I can read it. But this is a show about a child that goes missing and then another child that is found murdered. And it's a kind of like a murder mystery of who is killing these children. Along the way, you start to figure out that these children that are disappearing and reappearing sometimes seem to happen in different times of history. So there seems to be, as you watch the series, this thing taking place between 3 different periods of time: the present, the past, and the really distant past. And a lot of it has to do with this kind of like a cave in the forest, that people are able to go in this cave, and depending on which path they take inside this cave, they come out in either 1953, they go way, way back in time, 1986, or their present, which is 2019, which is kind of like our future by only a year or so, because this came out last year. It's a little difficult to follow, not as bad as Twin Peaks. Because what ends up happening is that you end up meeting the same characters in 3 different time periods. So the characters that you kind of know that are here now, when sometimes somebody visits the past, you might see them as a teenager, or you might see them, as a very young infant kind of child. Or obviously, if you're dealing with older characters, they're not as old. So they might be, old people now, middle age in the 80s, and maybe teenagers, in the 50s. Some of it has to do with the nuclear plant that they're nearby. Some of it has to do with a time travel person that seems to know what's going on. And it is just kind of pulling all these threads together of what is exactly happening. And then at the same time, there appears to be somebody who is kidnapping these children and performing some kind of experiment on them, thereby killing them in the process. So you have all these elements going on at the same time. The murder mystery, the sci-fi technological time travel aspect, and the bizarre kind of supernatural-ish results that are happening because of all this. Just like before, spoiler alert, we end here with a cliffhanger at the end of this particular season where we are introduced to a 4th time period, this one being, I believe, way in the future. This is a series that's been greenlit for a 2nd season, so hopefully we'll get a continuation. It is difficult to follow, I'm going to say this, and the biggest problem is there's so many characters. And obviously, by me watching it in German, it's a little more difficult to remember all these names and all these characters. And then when you kind of see them, because there's certain parts of the show where you cut to a different time period and you have to kind of get your bearings. Obviously in the 80s, you do hear a lot of 80s music, and in the 50s, you kind of see the cars look different and the locations are, but you can't really go that crazy. It's not cinematic in terms of being able to do a complete redress of your set to the extent where you're automatically knowing where you're at. So it is a little jarring to kind of remember what these characters are doing. And which is, wait, is this the girl? Wait, was she the nurse or was she the school teacher? And as the younger version of them. And a lot of times as they are introducing these characters for dramatic purposes, they're not being very clear as to who they are. So it makes it even more difficult to kind of find your footing, in this. This is definitely also reminds me of Lost, as I mentioned earlier, because it, at least within the first season, answers most of the questions of the mystery of what's happening. Yes, there are lingering mysteries that will continue and a big tease to what's going to happen next season, but they seem to at least give you the majority of the information, so you're not completely lost, in what's happening, no pun intended, like you were with Lost. Lost, I remember the biggest complaint was that you were getting more questions than answers. Here, they at least give you enough answers, but do provide you with a nice set of questions to keep you going in the future. This was definitely one to take a look at if you have a chance, because it was very well done, and it's the kind of show that I would imagine at one point somebody would probably turn it into an English version, an American version of it. Granted, we don't have that right now. I remember after Lost became successful, a lot of other television networks tried to do their own, metaphysical science fiction-y version of shows. I remember Fast Forward was one of them, and there were a couple of other shows. I think they all tanked, obviously. But this is the type of show that you would figure that when something like Stranger Things happens and everybody realizes that, oh my God, Netflix has it, how come we don't have it? The network saying, how come we don't have our own? You could picture those conversations taking place. somebody would probably say, hey, wait a minute, didn't they do a German version? But guess what? This is a German version that was made for Netflix. So I don't think Netflix would give up the rights to sell this to a network. But anyway, this is one that I'm going to follow the next time around. The next show you might want to look at, and it's funny because this show was around before Stranger Things, is called Black Mirror. This might be something that is more familiar, especially amongst genre people. And this is really a British show that is an anthology series, a sci-fi anthology series, which is something we haven't had here in a long time. The last times I remember, the most known anthology series that for genre people that might remember, you're dealing with something like a Twilight Zone type of show where you're telling these really weird stories one at a time. Then later you have Outer Limits, which is, I believe they might have gone to a longer, instead of the half-hour format, the hour-long formats. You had Amazing Stories in the 80s, the Spielberg version of that anthology type of thing where you're trying to tell a long-format story. Granted, Amazing Stories was not only sci-fi, it was horror, it was everything. They tried to cover all the different genres in a way. This one is strictly science fiction. This one is all these independent stories. They seem to be all kind of connected in the same world, more or less, by a thread. And as you get forward, as you move forward through the different seasons, because this is now in the 4th season, or the 4th series, the British, they call it season series. There's a lot of very known names attached to them, especially actors. Some directors, too, are pretty well known. I know Jodie Foster just directed an episode, and like John Hamm was in an episode. A lot of well-known faces, and it's becoming the type of show that people want to get involved in it. I can't go into the details of all the episodes because there's so many of them. Granted, it's a short series. It is the British model, and, I think it's maybe under 10 per series. It's not that humongous, but it's definitely worth checking it out in order. Watch the shows in order. Watch the episodes in order. I'm just going to mention one episode from this latest series. Now, I'm not even finished watching it yet. I'm still going through series 4 right now, but there was an episode very currently called the USS Callister. And this is an amazing, amazing episode because the episode is about a kind of like a computer designer, let's say, a programmer who works at this company, and his partner kind of acts like his boss, but he's really his partner. But this guy is very shy. Now, the actor's name is Jesse Plemons, and you might remember him from a couple of episodes from Breaking Bad towards the end of the series. He's the guy that looks like Matt Damon. He's like evil Matt Damon, if you remember. If you remember Breaking Bad, I remember a lot of the critics, when they were reviewing some of those episodes, they would refer to him as the evil Matt Damon because he looks like Matt Damon. He could be Matt Damon's cousin or something. But anyway, this particular episode is called the USS Callister, and it's about, like I said, this guy who at work, he's not very good with the ladies, and his partner treats him kind of bad, and he just kind of can't wait to go home and play his video games. Now, again, this is Black Mirror, so the video games in this time are more advanced than ours. They're very virtual reality oriented, where he just kind of clicks on this little device on his head and he's in this whole new world. And this whole new world is really, I guess, maybe, I don't know if they tried and they knew they couldn't get it, but this new world is Star Trek. It is classic Star Trek. The ship is very much like Star Trek. The interior, the clothing, everything is Star Trek. And it's about him playing the role of Captain Kirk. Obviously, it's not called Captain Kirk. They give them, different names. And again, this is probably all because of, legal problems. You couldn't get the rights, so you have to kind of simulate it. And when he's at work, he's working and he's having a tough time, and, a new person comes in, a new girl, and she's like, oh, I love the work you've done on blah, blah. And he's like, oh, really? And he doesn't know how to act, how to react to her. But she kind of, he shows him, oh, yeah, these are my things. So he's got all these toys, some of them at work and at home. And it's hilarious, but he's got all his collections of whatever, figures, toys. And basically every night he does that. So as you're watching the episode, it's really nice, and you're like, oh, he's such a cool guy. He's in reality, he's getting his butt kicked and this and that. But in the virtual world, he's able to kind of come out and be a little more assertive. So he is the captain, and you see him operating in the virtual world of, the U.S., this fictional television show called the USS Callister. So he's there, he's the captain, and there are so many nods to Star Trek. There's so many nods to Shatner. He's doing Shatner impressions more or less here and there. But what we find is that in the virtual world, he's a tyrant. He is a horrible human being. He hurts his crew. He murders people. He does all these things. And then the show kind of starts to turn into how his crew, especially this one new girl that he kind of got, and this is where you get technical, he kind of got her DNA sample to be able to bring her on the game without her real life person knowing about it. So she is kind of like a prisoner in his virtual reality world. And then she starts to kind of find out by talking to the rest of the crew that his boss has, without anybody knowing, been using their DNA to kind of force them to come and play, with him, and how he's mistreating everyone. So the episode continues to the point where it's everybody kind of rebelling against him and trying to figure out a way to escape. And by escape means to just stop the game and let them no longer play this game that he's playing. So, I think it's one of the best episodes they've had. They've had tons of other episodes that were really good, but this one really, really hits close to home because of the whole nerdy aspect of his interests and that sort of thing. And I love that actor. He's so good. He is the perfect psychotic Matt Damon, because that is exactly what he did. I remember in a way when Breaking Bad was that he was a lovable, nice, polite, gentle character that turns into a total monster, which is great. I think he was also in Fargo, the television series. He had a role in Fargo also. He's an actor that's, and I'm telling you, you look at him, you're like, oh crap, is that Matt Damon? It's like, no, it's not Matt Damon. Also, the special effects were awesome. They were so cool. And on the internet, the word started rolling around that people were saying, hey, why can't you create a series just based on this character, on the Star Trek-y side of this character, because they did it so perfectly. And obviously, this is the type of thing where you can probably pull it off once. You can't pull it off more than once. But they did it perfectly. And this is an excellent example of how good this show is. So as Black Mirror keeps gathering steam more and more, I mean, the show's been on for a while, like I said, and little by little, people are starting to notice that it's a very good show. So what's happening now is that other outlets are trying to do their own version of it, which is, it just happens. That's how things work. Sometimes the ripoffs are horrible, and sometimes they inspire new and better things. You never know. With that said, Amazon, the competitor to Netflix, one of the biggest competitors, I guess, other than Hulu, has come up with a series of their own called Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams. Philip K. Dick obviously being the late science fiction writer who wrote the original book of Blade Runner and many, many other sci-fi trippy stories. I guess they got the rights to use some of his stories or use his name, and now they have their own series now that just premiered not too long ago. And I've started watching them, and they're okay. They're not the best. The stories are interesting. They're getting some pretty known names, involved, at least at first. So it's a nice companion piece to Black Mirror. Bryan Cranston, for example, is one of the producers, and he was in one of the episodes. So it's very sci-fi, trippy stuff. It's very Philip K. Dick-ish, if you will, in terms of how weird it can get sometimes. So I would definitely say that if you are into Black Mirror, give Electric Dreams a try, because there might be some good ones in the mix that you might like. Again, just like Black Mirror, I'm not done with Electric Dreams. I'm still going through it. They're about a 10-episode series, I believe. And another person that's involved in this one is Ronald D. Moore from Battlestar Galactica, if you remember him. He is involved. He's one of the executive producers, like Bryan Cranston. Overall, the show feels a little more, I don't want to say cheap, but budget conscious, let's say. Black Mirror feels more cinematic. It feels more foreign, also more Britishy. This one feels a little more, American shot in Canada, kind of, a lot of sets that are, you could probably tell they're virtual reality sets, green screen type of stuff. Hey, nothing wrong with that. It's just a different feel. You know that you're one notch, a slightly notch below. Now, granted, you get yourself a couple of home run episodes and the show will elevate, but that's what I'm noticing right now, that it's kind of like its younger brother, and it's not as good yet as Black Mirror. Granted, Black Mirror has 4 seasons behind it. This one has just started, so it's a nice little alternate place to go. When you're looking for that kind of anthology kind of a show where every episode is separate than the other, and you only have to commit for 45, 55 minute story, and that's it. Now, along the line of that kind of sci-fi realm, we have another new show now called Altered Carbon. And from what I understand, this is based on a cyberpunk science fiction novel by Richard Morgan. This is an actual series now. This isn't an anthology, but I just started watching it. It's an interesting premise, very high quality special effects, very well done so far. Actiony, dark, very dark. And it stars Joel Kinnaman, who was in The Killing, then he was in Suicide Squad, he was in the remake of RoboCop. He's an actor I kind of like. Interesting role here. It's a very good environment for him to play off of. And again, this is another weird story where it's the future, super future, 200-300 years from now, where you have this kind of like a mercenary killer who is killed. But in this particular future, when people are killed, they lose their body, but their mind, let's say, or their soul in a way, is implanted on a kind of like a computer chip on the back of their neck, so that they can then take that chip and put it on ice, basically, on storage for a later day, if need be, to be inserted into a new body. So this guy now wakes up 300 years later or something, or even more than that, and he is asked to solve a possible murder with the condition that if he solves the murder, he will be, allowed to return, his sentence will be removed and he'll be free to go. And it's about solving a potential murder situation. It's a little complicated because you're getting to know all the mechanics of this new world that we live in now, where certain groups don't like the technology of being able to change a body and put it into another person. They refer to bodies as sleeves. So they talk about how, you're going to change sleeves. You get shot, don't worry about it, you're dead, but we'll just put you on a new sleeve, on a new body, and how you have the politics and the socio-economical issues of the richer people get the better bodies and the poor people get the crappiest bodies and stuff like that. So there's a lot of world building here and super violent, action packed. Again, I've only seen the first episode of this. It's called Altered Carbon, and it's interesting so far. I'll see if it, how far it's going to take me. Hopefully I won't lose interest. It's about 10 episodes, just like some of these other shows. So in a way, we talked about this before. The 10 episode format really works well nowadays because it's not that much of a commitment and there's not a lot of room for fat in the show. You don't have to feel like you're watching them just kind of tap dancing because they don't know what to do. They're filling it with information. I'm going to keep going with this one too. It's not an anthology, like I said before. It's a different, straight kind of sci-fi, weird kind of show. Again, more to the type of shows we were talking about earlier with like Dark and that kind of thing, where they kind of build. So it's another, possibility for you guys. Now, the final show I'm going to mention is one I just started watching the other day. And I know, I don't know how I find the time to watch all these shows, but this is a show that airs on Starz called Counterpart. And It's really unusual or difficult to describe it in terms of when you watch a commercial for it or an ad. You're like, well, what the hell exactly are we dealing with here? And not until you're actually seeing the show do you understand how sci-fi it is. And it's kind of like a spy thriller. It has a very Cold War German, Berlin kind of feel, because a lot of the show takes place in Berlin, or in Germany at least. And it's about a guy that works in some kind of government agency where he does this monotonous job that he goes in and he has to perform these really unusual tasks. And he doesn't really know what they are. He performs them, but he doesn't understand them. He's not allowed to ask. Super high security area. And one day, he's trying to get a promotion. They won't promote him. He's kind of probably in his 50s, maybe early 60s even. I don't know. He's kind of getting up there. And one day he's brought into a meeting and introduced to somebody that looks exactly like him. And that person explains that, he's come from the other side, and that we have a problem because they're trying to target these people, and he's trying to figure out who the murderer, or who the assassin is, because in the beginning of the show, we also see this assassination take place where all these agents get killed by this woman. And the mention of her being from the other world, not another world, but the other world. Kind of, you're later watching, you're like, wait, what? What are you talking about, another world? So apparently what's going on in the show is that there's another dimension to the world that these people are living in. And in the other dimension, they are duplicates of everybody, just like ours, let's say. And people's lives have changed after a certain period in time where different decisions were made and different political things are happening than in the world that you're starting off with. And somehow people are crossing over, and they seem to have this pact that, the crossing over is a very forbidden kind of thing because it can mess up things so bad. So it's kind of trying to figure out what is happening and to stop this crossover from taking place, and these assassinations apparently from taking place. So there's a very heavy political thing going on that has to do, and now this lead character, which I forgot to mention, is played by J.K. Simmons, actor from Whiplash. He's been in a lot of movies. He played, didn't he play Peter Parker's boss in one of the Spider-Man films? And I think he plays DC films. He plays Gordon, I think. So he's been playing. He's been hopping, from DC to Marvel left and right. But he's a great actor. He won an Oscar for Whiplash, I believe. Anyway, he's the guy who plays this main character, and he's playing two characters. He's playing the kind of the kind of dumpy, sad, depressed guy from the main story, but he's also playing his counterpart from the other world that comes, who's more energetic, more assertive, more successful in his career. So he's kind of seeing what his life could have been if he was a little different, a little more assertive with his life and that kind of thing. So I think that's what the show is going to kind of play on, is the difference in your life depending on your decisions that are made. Every fork in the road that you are faced with, what would have happened if you'd taken the other path. So I think that's what they're going to play with. I've only seen the first episode. This one is not a series dump. It's one at a time, so you're only getting them once a week. So I'm gonna keep up with it. Like I said, so far I liked it. So far I'm pretty impressed by what they're doing. It helps when you have a good actor. When you have a very good actor, he absorbs, the viewer into the story. And the fact that they're slowly trickling the sci-fi element into it also helps. You don't want to overload somebody with, the minutia of sci-fi. Sometimes you throw too much, sci-fi gobbledygook at people that you kind of lose control and you just lose interest. Here, they're giving it to you a little bit at a time, and you're slowly kind of peeling that onion of information. So that's yet another show if you don't have enough shows to deal with. So we've gone through quite a number of shows. Don't know if you guys have seen any of them. Hopefully you're interested in some of them, but there's some really interesting stuff out there. Just when you think that, there's nothing left to watch, there you have it. Some good stuff on its way. Well, I hope everybody had a good time going over our Solo trailer and teaser descriptions. One little tiny thing that I found out after watching it a number of times is that if you freeze frame a couple of the shots of Solo in that little speeder that he's being chased through in the city, you can actually see this golden dice dangling up there. So it's there's a lot of Easter eggs apparently hidden on these trailers. And that's probably going to be our main focus, going forward as far as Star Wars goes, because that is the next big one. It's only a few months away, but at the same time, I'm sure we're going to get The Last Jedi on Blu-ray and possibly deleted scenes that we've been hearing about. So there's a lot of Star Wars related stuff in the works. There's been a lot of news about more future television productions, trilogies, whatever. There's a lot of stuff in the works. And I hope you guys also enjoyed our television side of the show today, having to do with these weird shows that are out there for you to kind of continue in that Stranger Things vibe, if you will. There's lots of them out there. There's probably even more coming, and there's probably a few I haven't even touched upon. So you guys got plenty to pick from. So on behalf of everybody here, thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon here at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
I have come to this building every day and done my job. 3 decades I've given to this office. But honestly, sometimes it scares me. I don't know what we do here. Have I done something wrong?
Someone's walked in from the other side.
The other side,
Whatever you do, don't panic.
Hi, Howard.
Billy, do you have any idea how lucky you are? No one gets to meet their other.
Other?
30 years ago, during the Cold War, there was an experiment. Something went wrong. They opened up a passage.
When you go through this door, you come out the other side, you're in another world, identical to ours.
There was one reality, and then it duplicated. We share genetics, childhood. I want to know how you became so different. A kill order came out from my side, targeting people on your side. Handle is Baldwin. She's a contract assassin. Your wife may be her next target.
We're caught in the middle of something whether we want to be or not.
We should just build a wall and never come back.
They hate your side for what you've done to ours.
You don't know these people like I do. They don't tolerate mistakes.
The last thing you want is me with nothing left to say.
If you would like to subscribe to our show, send us messages, or see video links to some of the topics we talked about today, please visit our homepage at geekfestrants.com or our YouTube channel, Facebook page, or iTunes at GeekFest Rants.
I don't know what we're yelling about!
GeekFest Rants is produced by Carlos Perón, copyright 2018.
This broadcast is part of the IC Robots Radio Network. Visit icrobots.com for this and many other nerd/nostalgia related podcasts. You won't be sorry for long.